This is the story of how I almost lost $1 million. Welcome to another episode of Euphoric the Podcast. I'm your host, Karolina Jodkowolska. I'm an alcohol-free empowerment coach, and I'm also the best-selling author of the book Euphoric, Ditch Alcohol and Gain a Happier, More Confident You. And I wanted to share with you today this story about how I almost lost well over $1 million. You see, there was a moment of time that I felt I was on the cusp of either moving forward with this dream, moving forward with this belief that I could actually make money doing something that I loved. And I had an office job and I wasn't sure if it would work out. And I had so many different fears, doubts, and insecurities about actually taking the leap forward. And I look back to that juncture of time because seriously, if I hadn't taken the leap forward, I would have lost over $1 million. That money would have just been gone, poof, like not in my existence anymore. Well over $1 million that my business has generated, my boutique coaching business has generated since I first got started. And it really reminds me of this thing that I had to get over for a long time. You see, there was a moment of doubt that I had where I used to make fun of people who put themselves out there. I used to make fun of people who showed up online and posted on their stories or on their videos and were talking about business. I remember I went to high school with someone and maybe it was like 2015 or 16. She was talking about becoming like a life coach or a spiritual coach, and she posted something about it on Facebook and I just scoffed. I was like embarrassed for her. Seriously, right? And I think that we get this in our minds a lot too. We see people, sharing, and a lot of times it inspires us, but sometimes we do think if we actually did it, it would be cringy. If we actually showed up and talked to the people who went to high school with, or who went to college with, or who went, and we got our jobs and our professional careers with, like it would be so embarrassing to start showing up online in a way that actually makes us money, actually attracts clients and the incredible people you were meant to work with into your life. And so we get really hung up on this cringe factor of like, do I really want to be that person who's putting myself there out online? Do I really want to be a person who has a podcast? Do I really want to be just another coach? And let me tell you, you're not going to be any of those things. You're uniquely you, and you have a unique gift that only you can share. But I think what's really fascinating is that when I thought about like this like what instance where this, woman I went to high school with showed up in 2016 posting about her business, and I thought it was embarrassing for her. What if she went on to become a millionaire? What if here I am sitting back in my cubicle, scoffing, judging, criticizing something I don't know anything about, thinking that she's so uncool, like I'm too cool for school, I don't even post on social media. And here she is sharing about her services and she's cringe. And what if she's the one who develops a multi-million-dollar empire and I'm the one who's stuck in my cubicle? It's funny how that works, right? And there's this incredible line by Jen Sincero. Jen Sincero is the woman who wrote the books You Are a Badass. I also love the book You Are a Badass at Making Money. If making money, keeping money, finances, anything to do around money is awkward and weird for you, feels like you can't ever keep it or you can't earn it, I used to be a very under-earning person. I made well below my potential. I am not your like corporate high-flying woman who is like in the boardroom or anything. I was making in the mid 5 figures for most of my career, and I started way lower than that. I never knew how to make 6 figures in an actual real job. Never happened for me, right? I was a notorious under-earner, and one of the reasons because of that is because I got into the nonprofit sector, and I told myself this story that I'm doing good in the world, right? I actually got an MBA, and my friends in that same MBA program who went off to Wall Street or to other corporate jobs were getting much better job offers, much higher paying jobs. But I was a saint who, was telling myself the story that I don't want more money if I have these like soul draining jobs. I want to stay in the nonprofit sector and actually make a difference. So back then I had this real big conflation between you either are making money over here and you've sold your soul to the devil, or you aren't making very much money and you're actually making an impact or, caring and serving more people or whatnot. in my mind back then, it didn't really exist that you could have both, right? So I'm a notorious under earner. I'm really never like reaching my income potential in a normal office 9 to 5 job. And I'm reading this book, How to Be a Badass at Making Money. I really recommend it for you if you haven't read it before. You're going to love this book. It's going to go so deep into your money stories and heal so many of the blocks you have too. But anyways, as I'm reading this book, Jen Sincero is someone I'm really relating to because she's telling you the story of how she used to be dirt poor. Like she was a woman in her 40s that was living in a garage. Not maybe like on the street or something. She's not from like a slum in a developed country, right? She's obviously living in like in California in a first world place, but she is also an under earner. And she literally could not make more than like $30,000 or $40,000 up until her like mid 40s, right? So like a lot of her friends were, totally out earning her and all this kind of stuff. And she was kind of this like poor writer or journalist, or I think it was like a freelance writer is what she really was doing back then. And she had a moment where she decided that this whole time that she wasn't making money is because she was actually trying to be cool. Where like she didn't want to try that hard and she didn't want to seem desperate and she didn't want to put herself out there. And so she had this like moment of decision that was like, I can either be cool and broke or I can be rich and I don't know, lame, whatever. But it was this moment of deciding, that same moment where I had about my friend who, or maybe not even my friend, it was just someone I went to my high school, the same moment that she was posting about her business on Facebook, and I was like, oh, that's embarrassing. In that moment, I was choosing that it's better to be cool and aloof and not talk about your passions and not put your business out there and actually make money than actually make money and help people change their lives. So I wonder if any of this resonates with you, because until I got over my own cringe factor, until I started showing up online and sharing my story and sharing my transformation and sharing about the framework and the coaching and the offers that I had that could change other people's lives, I wasn't making money online and I could have lost $1 million. Literally, I could have lost so much of my net worth, about my career progression, if I got stuck in this one excuse that I was too cool to show up online. And that's the thing that often holds us back, is we want to have a business that is aligned with our passions. We want to have a business where we don't have to commute, or we don't have to work for a jerky boss, or we like get more time off, or we get to actually decide our schedule. One of the things that's holding us back, though, is this fear of actually showing up and of being seen. And we think we're going to be embarrassing. We think people might make fun of us. We think that like people are going to judge us. So there's a lot of fears wrapped into this. It's not just the fear of like being too cringy and stuff like that. There's so much that we have around our own visibility. And I was actually just in this gorgeous class earlier today with a leader that I really respect. We're going to get him on the podcast too. And he talks about being fiercely visible. And I was talking about some of my blocks that exist today, because I was able to talk myself out of the block of not showing up online when I first started. Because when I first started, no one was really watching me. Nobody was really paying attention, right? I had a baby Instagram. I barely had any people following me on an email list or anything like that. So back then it felt like a little easier to just show up no matter what I was wearing or if I had my makeup done or whatever. Like I didn't even really care about some of those things. If you find pictures of me back from like 2018, 2019, I look kind of different because I didn't really care so much about those things. Now I'm a little bit more polished, a little bit more established, but at the same time, some of that feeling of needing to be polished might be holding me back from showing up more, right? That if I didn't feel like I always had to be so polished, I might show up more. So I think that in all, we have this deeper fear of just being seen for who we are, this deeper fear of not wanting to be standing in our authenticity and our power that can really hold us back from showing up. And if you're already online, you're already a coach, you know what I'm talking about. You know that sometimes we can put together like a polished piece of content, a polished reel, but then we don't want to talk on our stories, or we don't want to come on live because maybe it either, we didn't do our makeup that day, or maybe we don't want to seem desperate. We want to be more mysterious and stuff. And it's funny how like there could be a little bit of that element in our lives, but for the most part, People fall in love with people who show up. People fall in love with people who are actually like a regular presence in their lives, and you know that they're going to be around. So personally, I'm committing to doing more lives on Instagram, more talking stories, just showing up more, sharing my thoughts, sharing my personality, sharing the transformations I'm having, that my clients are having. I think what I've done a really good job of is building a really successful business where people's lives are really fundamentally changed. And we do so much work inside of my programs, inside of Become Euphoric, inside of Become Emboldened, inside of the certification program, inside of my business coaching, that I've done a kind of a poor job actually showcasing that now to the world and showing like, this is what's happening in these containers. These are the transformations that people are having. These are the things, the ahas that I'm having as I'm growing as a leader. Like, I really need to actually strategize a little bit more and focus a little bit more on actually showcasing that to the world. And I know that maybe my next million and the next million after that is actually hinging on me being able to do that, on actually showing up more and telling the story and having passion and showcasing the art and all these beautiful things that come as a result of being seen. So I almost lost $1 million because I didn't do that in the first place. And now I can recognize that my next level, my next growth, my next evolution in my business is doubling down on that even more. But I also almost lost $1 million because I didn't feel confident enough to get started. And I think that this is another lie that we tell ourselves, that you actually start with confidence. And I had another podcast episode a few weeks ago called What I Wish I Knew Before I Started My Business, or As I Was Starting My Business, Part 2, that's all about this idea that we think we have to be more confident, or we have to be more ready, or we have to know what we're doing before we even start. And it's actually like this physical impossibility. You can't know what you're doing before you even start. You can't become confident in something you've never done before you even start. It does not exist that way. No one is just born with that level of confidence. And if they are, they're like the 1% of our society, right? Like, most of us are born with, like having the lack of confidence, having the introversion, having the shyness, having the fear of being seen. And so I really thought that I had to be confident in order to get started, and that held me back a lot. I didn't even think I could be an entrepreneur because I was foreign. I grew up speaking Polish as my first language. I didn't even speak English until I went to school. And even though I grew up like American, I still had to go to Polish school. I still went to Poland. I still ate different foods than everybody. Like, I always felt foreign, right? Even though I'm American, I speak the language and obviously all that, I felt really different growing up. And so because I didn't feel like I came from a family of success, even though my parents worked their asses off as immigrants to get to the level where they're at, I didn't feel like I had those inroads. I just felt like entrepreneurs were these different breed of people that I was not. And that I just wasn't confident enough. I was foreign, I was shy, I was introverted. Like, I just wasn't an entrepreneur. And so, even getting my business started was almost something that didn't happen because I kept telling myself that lie. And some of the things that I actually overcame in order to make that million and make over that and, build this beautiful dream out was the transformation I got from changing my relationship with alcohol. Because a lot of the, the overflow that I got from that, the incredible life change, the incredible sense of identity change was actually overflow from, wow, like, if I'm not drinking, now what could I do? If I haven't drank for 6 weeks, what does that mean for my identity? Who could I really be? It really opened up the floodgates to think a little bit bigger like that. So I know what it feels like to not feel confident. I know what it feels like to not feel ready either. And that's the thing too, is that we think that there's some kind of perfect time that we're going to just land on when we're going to feel ready. But it doesn't really work like that, because we're also not going to ever feel ready. Like, truly, we're not. You're not going to feel ready to start doing something that your heart's calling you to do until you just do it. And that is literally a choice. There's not a feeling you get behind it. It's not like a feeling like, now I'm ready. Now I've been blessed. Now, I'm qualified, right? It's not a feeling like that. It's actually a decision. And it's a decision that you make out of bravery. Bravery is what gets you to get to that next level. Bravery is what actually moves you from not feeling ready to just deciding, I don't feel ready, but I'm going to move forward anyway. We've all heard that saying, right? That you feel the fear and you do it anyway. And I think that's really key to recognize that there's never gonna, you know how parents tell you, like, there's never a time when you feel ready for kids? That you just get pregnant and then you have the kid and then the kid teaches you how to be a parent. It's kind of the same thing in going after your dreams, becoming an entrepreneur, becoming a coach. You will never feel ready. Even when you are already in this industry and you're going for the next goal, let's say you're already coaching but you want to get on stages. You're already coaching but you want to write a book, or you want to grow your business to the next level. We don't actually feel ready for those things. What we have to do is sit really deeply with our hearts and actually really connect with our desire for what we want. And obviously, when you want like 12 different things at one time, you have to prioritize a little bit and you have to really lean on, what does my heart want most now, right? But we have to really lean on that heart and then take the courage and that leap of faith to say, I'm not going to wait for a feeling that's never going to arrive. I'm going to just decide that I am ready, right? Another reason I almost lost $1 million is because I thought I was late to the game. So I changed my relationship with alcohol in 2018. And at this point, I don't know how well versed you are, but here's a little history lesson. I think This Naked Mind came out in 2016. Holly Whitaker started blogging already, probably 2015 maybe. I could be wrong on some of these dates, so excuse me if I am. But if you know some of these names, right, they got started a few years before me. William Porter was already around. Who else was? Oh, Catherine Gray with The Unexpected Joy of Being Sober. That book was already released. So when I changed my relationship with alcohol, they were already leaders speaking up about this new way of thinking about your relationship with alcohol. So there used to be the black and white way where it's either you were in recovery and you're an alcoholic and you can't drink, poor you, or, you know, you're normal and you get to drink whenever you want and all the good stuff, right? And that's like the really old-fashioned way. But back in like 2015, 16, 17, 18, these new leaders are coming up and saying, hey, anyone can reevaluate alcohol because it's actually bad for all of us. And it's actually really hard to moderate for all of us. And we actually get so much more freedom and transformation in our lives for all of us when we decide to take a break and let it go and eliminate it. And I think that that was really, like, that changed my life so much, right? Those foremost leaders, I have to recognize how much I'm indebted to them, that my relationship with alcohol has changed. And you might be listening to me and being like, Carolina, you started in 2018? Like, that was a long time ago. Of course you're part of this movement. Of course you're a leader too, you know? But back then I didn't think that. Back then I thought I was too late to the game. And one of the limiting beliefs I had, that it was too saturated. That there already was the books out, that there already was the programs out, that there already were the coaches out, that I was too late for the game. And I wonder if this is holding you back too. Because it's 2024. And more so than 2018, there are more coaches out there. There is more conversation being had in the alcohol-free conversation, the alcohol-free movement, the sober curious movement, coaching in general, personal development in general, spiritual growth, like all these things. There's more conversation now than there ever has been before. So it's going to be really easy for us to go into the ego and think to ourselves, well, there's already leaders. It's too late. It's too saturated. I'll never make a dent in this. But here's the thing we don't recognize. When you were starting out in the alcohol-free movement and it wasn't very popular yet, most people weren't doing dry January, mocktails were unheard of, alcohol-free beverages were really unheard of. Do you know what an uphill battle it was to even bring awareness to the topic? Do you know how many times when I told people what I did for a living or how I, started my coaching business, what I was doing with my business, at least because I was still working a day job then, so the day job was my living, but I was growing this coaching business. When I tried to explain it to people, like, they totally glossed over and thought that I was someone who had a huge rock bottom and that now I help people in like sober living situations. Like, they had no idea. They couldn't even conceptualize what I was talking about. And I was trying to use conversation and words like, no, this isn't like ditch alcohol because like your life is over because you're under a bridge. This is like ditch alcohol because you want to become happier and healthier. And people like didn't understand, right? And to think now that we're in 2024, the sober curious conversation around like, let's reevaluate alcohol, let's drink less, let's not put all of our needs around alcohol, let's actually grow in our personal development, our spiritual development, our entrepreneurial development instead of drinking all weekend. That's a more normal conversation. Now, obviously not in every circle, right? Not in every space, in every place in the world, but that's more normalized in our mainstream than it ever has been before. Like, there's actually TV shows that have picked up on the sober curious movement and it said that. So like when you're on Netflix, like, you know that the movement has grown, right? And when you think that makes it oversaturated, or that it's too late for you, that you should have joined a long time ago or started your coaching business a long time ago, what you're failing to miss out on is all the conversation, all the awareness that's already been built in your favor has already brought up so many other people to start becoming more cognizant and more conscious about their relationship with alcohol. So you don't have to start from the ground zero to educate people about, how to reevaluate alcohol, or is it really serving them? They're already more in tune with that. Does that make sense? Imagine if you were a personal development coach 10 years ago, the idea of changing a limiting thought or limiting belief, the idea of, changing your subconscious, the idea of like abundance and scarcity, all of those things would have been so foreign to most people on this planet. Like 10 years ago, it would have been like you're speaking a different language, unless someone was hip to it, right? Unless someone was hip to it and knew what you're talking about and was part of the lingo because they read the same books you did and they did listen to the same podcasts and they went to the same conferences. But today, that's not really the case. Now, obviously, there's pockets of people and circles of people that have no idea what personal development is, and they don't, none of this stuff matters, right? But we have to recognize that as a society as a whole, these topics are a lot more prevalent than they ever used to be. So you don't have to go from the ground zero to educate someone from the very little get-go of like, oh, hey, you don't have to be an alcoholic to change your relationship with alcohol, or hey, have you ever considered taking a break? They're already 2 steps forward with that because all the other leaders have been talking about this, and it's been, brought up in pop culture and TV and stuff, that they've kind of heard of it before. So I see so much more mature people coming into this space who still want to change their relationship with alcohol, because just because you're more mature in the cognition doesn't mean that you have a total handle on completely having no desire to drink. So let me illustrate this in my life as a better example. I knew for 7 years that I didn't like my relationship with alcohol. So I was drinking for 13 years, give or take. And 7 of those, I knew I wasn't happy with it. Now, the earlier before that, 10 years or 12 years that I was drinking, I probably was just as hungover. I was probably dealing with consequences of drinking too much. I probably had all that stuff happen, but I was way too naive and unaware of the problem. I was just like, yeah, whatever, I'm young. This is what everybody does. So it's as I started to become more healthy, more mindful, more conscious of just wanting to be a better version of myself, that's when I really started recognizing that alcohol wasn't serving me. But I didn't change anything. I wanted to change things, but it was awareness came first, and I wasn't able to change things. So there's this thing that we teach in the certification program about how we make change from the conscious competence model. And so for a really long time, we actually know we want to change, but we aren't able to make sustainable changes. And that was me for about 7 years. Now, that was before the alcohol-free movement started. Those 7 years were completely alone, in the dark. I'd never heard anyone talking about alcohol or reevaluating alcohol unless it was this weird recovery, sober 12-step type of thing, right? Not just saying that that's weird. I just mean that's the only way I ever heard of it. And so it wasn't, imagine if the alcohol-free movement was around in those 7 years when I was reevaluating and trying to drink less and trying to moderate. Maybe it wouldn't have been 7 years until I actually did something different. Maybe it would have only been 3 years. Maybe it would have only been 2 years. So what I'm trying to say is that I lived with the awareness that alcohol wasn't serving me for 7 years, but I didn't actually make any changes. And so now what's happening is if you think it's too saturated, now people aren't spending so much time in that 7-year period. They're making that awareness jump a little faster. But they still need your help to actually make the change. Because the thing about changing your relationship with alcohol is it's not just about not drinking. There's so many people who stop drinking for a month or 2 months and then they just go back to it because they never changed their desire for alcohol. They never changed the subconscious programming. They never changed that craving, that level of feeling that my needs are being met by this drink. And you might be listening to this and still feel like you have those needs or those desires. And I definitely recommend you get into become euphoric in order to make those desires disappear for you. So if you are at that point though, where you are feeling like, oh yeah, like I've gone through this, I read those books, I did these programs, like my brain has changed a lot, you have something of real big importance, a really great gift to share with other people. And I think this transcends just helping someone change their relationship with alcohol. Becoming a coach isn't just helping someone solve one thing, right? And that's why the Empowered AF Coach Certification Program is so in-depth. It's so holistic. We have you graduate with 5 different certifications because coaching is not just helping someone with one thing. Now, maybe our niche can be about that. Maybe what we mostly talk about on the internet is about that. Obviously, we want to bring people together with similar problems and similar, challenges and offer them similar solutions. But being a coach is never helping one person with just one little thing, right? It's their whole lives that you're helping them with. It's everything that they bring to you. And that's why it's important to me that if you're becoming an alcohol-free coach, you also need to know how to speak to someone about like finding purpose in their life, for example, or how to get their needs met in a relationship, or how to really believe in themselves. Like these are all really important topics. And so I knew that in the certification program, we had to bring it all together. We had to make something so beautiful, so holistic, that is geared toward the person who's reevaluating alcohol in their lives, but that you as a coach are going to have to actually way more skills beyond just that. And even that alone is so, so transformational. So back to my main point is if you think it's too late or it's too saturated, did you know that there's 13 million doctors in this world? And I looked that up a few months ago, so that could even be higher now. I don't know. But around 13 million doctors in this world. Do you know how many certified coaches there are? Less than like 150,000. So if we think that everybody's online, everybody's a coach, everybody's sharing, everybody's in a podcast, everybody's doing all this stuff, it's because you're surrounded with that, right? Because you're a learner, you're a grower, you're someone who cares about this stuff. But trust me, in the real world, it doesn't feel like that. You feel like everyone's already doing this because you're surrounding yourself with this material, which is great. But I bet you in your local life, so not the people you know online, not people you know through programs, not people you know from any entrepreneurial circles, just in your local life, the people you went to high school with, the people you went to college with, your neighbors, your family friends, I bet you no one's actually doing this. And if anyone is, it's like one person, right? It's not too saturated. It's not too late. Like this is actually the perfect time to take your dreams seriously. And can you believe that there was a version of me back in 2018 who almost thought it was too late to get started in a like alcohol-free coaching business? Back in 2018, like this was even before the pandemic, like so many people reevaluated alcohol during the pandemic. And in 2018, somehow I thought it was too late to the party. You're not too late to the party now. Like there are so many people who are going to be changing in the next few decades. There's so much work to be done. There's so much, we have a default brain that tells us negative stories because it's evolutionarily built to look out for what's negative. And that brings us so much pain in the world. It brings us so much scarcity in the world. It brings so much hopelessness in the world. It brings so much status quo and mediocrity. If we know how to reprogram the brain for success, and this is something that we do like a little bit over and over, like we have probably one big transformation in this area and then we keep working on it and keep working on it and then another big transformation in this area, we can literally change how the world operates. We can literally go from a fear-based society to a faith-based society. And I'm not talking about religion, right? I mean the faith that things will work out, the faith that we're taken care of, the faith that we can love each other and embrace each other instead of always be so divided and so in fear and all that kind of stuff. So it's not too saturated. We haven't even gotten started, if we're being honest. Another thing that almost held me back from making $1 million, the other thing that almost made me lose $1 million is that I thought I was too young to get started. And this really quickly morphed into me being too old. So it's really funny if you're listening to this and you think you're too young or that you're not experienced enough or that like no one will listen to you because like you're in your 20s or early 30s. I definitely went through that. And it's so uncanny how quickly you go from being too young to too old, right? Like now I think I'm too old and obviously like I don't, like I still show up and stuff, but now I'm almost like, oh, maybe I'm not as hip or I don't know these like real trends or I don't know the TikTok or whatever it is. Like there's this feeling like I have more wrinkles now. Like are people gonna really listen to me and stuff like that? But when I first started, I ditched alcohol when I was 30, and I started my coaching business when I was 31. And when I started, if you've ever heard my backstory, I first started just posting on social media. So it's kind of like depends on how you count when you actually launch a business. But all I was doing was posting on social media and writing blogs. So I wasn't actually selling anything yet, right? And then I got certified, I started a program, I started doing one-on-one coaching, I wrote my book, like all of the magic happened. And now, me and my husband both like work for the company, and we travel the world, and we've helped thousands of people change their lives, and we host retreats, and we have this incredible certification program. I mean, the dreams that I've accomplished are just like, I can't almost fathom them sometimes, like from where I started. But when I started at that 31, I thought I was way too young. Like everyone that was in the alcohol-free movement at that time was either in their early 40s, late 40s, like maybe even 50s. I thought, especially because I was talking about alcohol and there was this, whole recovery community out there too, I would just be canceled. Who is this young bimbo? She doesn't know anything she's talking about. I know what I'm talking about. Like I have 2 master's degree. I'm smart. I've read over 1,500 books at this point of my life. Like I know what I'm talking about, right? I am a well-read, well-studied, multi-certified person, professional who knows what she's talking about. But back then, I was so insecure that because I looked young, and obviously I've grown to this level too, so back then maybe I did have less certifications, but I still had the passion and I had the knowledge and I knew that this could help people. And back then, when I thought I was too young, I really was held back by that. Like it was this real fear that I'm somehow not qualified. And maybe you don't vibe with being too young because you're not young anymore in the sense of what we think of as young as being in our 20s or something. But it can translate to that imposter syndrome. I'm not qualified enough. I don't know enough. And I'd say to this is that no, there's not going to be a magical fairy that just hits you on the head and says, now you're qualified. And we have to wait for that feeling or that moment to come in our lives. But at the same time, sometimes that feeling of imposter syndrome is actually guiding us to get more qualified. It kind of breaks my heart to see, I love to see people who are passionate and want to share about helping people change their lives and all this stuff. But sometimes we don't actually have enough training and education yet, especially when we're talking about something that's so foundational to our lives, our habits, alcohol, our subconscious. In some ways, I think we do need to have the humility and say yeah, actually I probably should get some training in this area, which I did, right? I did do that, and I still felt like I was too young. And then what's so funny that happened is I don't know what year it was. Maybe I was 34. All this time I'm too young. And then all of a sudden I start noticing that I have more wrinkles on my face. And I'm like, shit, I'm too old, right? And so that's often way more common that I hear from people is that they think they're too old. And I work with women anywhere in their 30s up until their 70s. I've had clients in their 70s who've launched businesses and become coaches. So you're not too old if you're under the age of 75. And that's even totally arbitrary. There's women who started running marathons in their 80s. Grandma Moses started painting in her 80s and started actually becoming a famous artist and selling her art in her 80s. We're never too old to go after our dreams. There's so many people who haven't gotten started with their dreams, like Julia Child and other incredible leaders, until they were much older in life. And so it's a total lie when we tell ourselves that we're too old. And sometimes that can hold me back, thinking I'm getting older and older, and will people really pay attention to me? And every time I plant that seed of doubt, I'm losing money. I'm losing impact. For me, it really actually isn't about the money. I think it's really nice to get to a point where you have that financial security and stability. But it's the universe or God or whatever it is talks to me and tells me you're meant to change these lives. And when you're hiding in your seed of doubt, and when you're hiding in your fears, when you're hiding because you don't think you're confident enough, you are not helping the people who are meant to be helped by you. And that actually drives me to action much quicker than thinking about the money. However, it is kind of uncanny to think that if I let these things hold me back, I would lose well over $1 million in my life. Poof, just gone, right? So we get stuck with these, I'm not ready, I'm too old, I'm too young, it's too saturated, I don't want to be cringy, all these things that are holding us back. And I really do believe too that like I know that sometimes I'm opened up talking a little bit about my relationship with money. And I used to have a really crappy one. I was an under earner for a very long time. I had 2 master's degrees. So I thought I should be earning more at that point. I had an MBA, for Christ's sake. People with an MBA usually make a lot more money than I was making. So I have this identity of someone who doesn't know how to make money. And I know sometimes we can feel like I don't have the money to afford this. I don't have the money to pay for this. I don't even know how to get started. I don't have that money. And I really didn't feel like I did have it either. But the thing you have to recognize, and that's why, the podcast episode is titled the way that it is that if you have this desire to grow a business, if you have a desire to own your own business, to step into this service profession, become a coach, deepen your coaching skills, you have to recognize that the more in you go, the more money you'll make. And if you don't actually go into it and step into it, you'll never make that money. You'll never make more, right? So it's like one of those chicken and egg things. Like, oh, I don't have the money to get started. But then at the same time, when is that ever going to change? How many years of your life are you going to keep going the same patterns and the same status quo? Like, imagine it's next year and it's October of next year and you're still in the same exact place in life, the same exact place. How freaking disappointing will that be? Nothing will change if nothing changes, right? And so I know sometimes it feels hard to feel that, like, I really felt it, right? Like, I was an under earner. I didn't have the money. I lived in one of the most expensive areas in the world. I had a mortgage. Like, how the hell am I actually going to be able to afford to launch my coaching business? Because I know I need to get certified. I know I need to get the training. I know I need the mentorship to learn how to grow a business as well. And if you came to my last Passion Masterclass, I was able to share with you too how when I barely invested in my business my first year, I made $7,000 in my business. And when I went all in on mentorship and getting more certifications, I made $100,000. So it's a huge difference that literally I know I acted differently because I had the accountability. I know I acted differently because I had the structure. And I know I acted differently because I actually was given a roadmap by someone who'd gone on the path before me and could actually show me the way instead of me trying to cobble it together from all these different random sources on the internet, right? And so it's like that chicken and the egg kind of a thing. Like, I don't have enough money to go after my dream, but when will that ever change unless I actually give my dreams a chance? It's like you loan your present day self money from the future that you know the future self will make, right? And it's hard sometimes to do that, but we have to have that faith. We have to have that faith that your dreams are inevitable, that you will make money off of your passion, that you are meant to help a lot of people's lives. Otherwise, you're just going to miss out. Your brain is literally the only thing that's holding you back in this current reality. There is a piece of hardware and software in your brain that's telling you that the status quo is the only life you'll ever live, that your dreams are silly, that, going after your dreams is foolish, that investing in your dreams is risky, that, showing up on the internet is cringy, that it's too late, you're too old, it's too saturated, that you'll never make money going off of your dreams, or if you're already coaching, that you'll never make more money, that, this is really hard, it'll never work out. That brain is wrong. It's wrong, right? It's completely wrong. It was programmed by a past generation where a lot of these things weren't actually possible. I'm going to do a podcast episode about that because it's something I really care about. But it's wrong. There is a world where possibility exists. There is a world where anything is possible for you. There is a world where you achieve your dreams. There is a world where you're making double, triple, quadruple, 10 times as much money. If you guys are into quantum physics, like the quantum physics theorists right now, the string theorists, they believe in like multiple dimensions and multiple universes. Like, that's what physics is actually showing to us. Maybe you watched that show Dark Matter on Apple TV, and it was all about these parallel universes that this guy was going between. There is a version of you that can double, triple, quadruple, and 10x your income and your impact. And if you're always going to stay with this reality and this brain and always be like, no, that's not possible, I can't see it, I can't feel it, I can't believe in it, I'm not going to go after it, then you're gonna stay in this reality, right? So I'm so, so glad that even though I faced these fears, even though I had these doubts, even though I had these limiting beliefs that were really constraining me, there's a version of me that said, F it, that said, I'm gonna go after my dreams, that I'm gonna keep investing in myself, that I'm gonna keep taking these leaps of faith, that I'm going to keep doing big things in my life. And I just have to remember that when I feel restricted and I tell myself no and that it's not possible, I literally don't feel good. And when I step into that sense of expansiveness and yes, this is meant for me and I'm going all in and I'm going for it, I feel so different. I show up so different. So I hope you can take some lessons out of this podcast episode. Let me know what resonated with you the most by sending me a DM, or better yet, send a screenshot of this podcast episode and tag me on your stories. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to connect with you. If you're interested in joining our fall class of the Empowered AF Coach Certification Program, it is the last time you can get certified this year. I'm not even sure when we're going to open up our 2025 class. So now is literally the time to get in. And the way to get in is you have to be accepted. But I make it simple for you. You submit an application by answering a few questions, and then we get on a quick call to see if the program is a good fit for you. If it's not, I'll be really honest and I'll point you in a better direction. But if it is, I will invite you in to join the fall 2024 class. You'll get an official acceptance letter, and then we will embark on a 10-month journey where you will graduate in 5 months with 5 different certifications under your belt. Join me in Palm Springs for an all-inclusive business weekend retreat, and then go on for 4 more months with me for business training and coaching to launch a successful boutique coaching business. If you're already certified or you're already a coach and you want to grow and with more clients and add more skill sets to your toolkit and really immerse yourself with alcohol-free entrepreneurs and leaders, I still think this is a really good program for you. We have about 30% of all of our coaching classes are existing coaches, but you're also, if you're brand new, if you're starting from scratch, if you just have a big dream and a big heart, we'll teach you everything you need to know too, okay? So I really hope to meet you, to connect with you. Be sure to submit an application because the day that this podcast airs, I think you only have a few more days actually to submit an application before we get started on October 18th. So be sure to do that. If you have any questions, let me know. I love you, I care for you, I'm rooting for you, and I hope this was helpful.